You're about to ask your friend if they can pick you up from the airport, and before the question even leaves your mouth, you hear yourself say, "I'm so sorry to bother you." You need an extension on a deadline, and the email starts with, "I'm really sorry, I know you're busy." Someone bumps into you at the grocery store, their cart hits your ankle, and somehow you're the one apologizing. You rehearse a simple request in your head 4 times before sending it, not because the words are complicated, but because you're trying to figure out how to say it in the smallest, softest, least inconvenient way possible. And here's the strange part. You already know the other person would probably say yes. You already know it's a reasonable thing to ask, but something in your body tightens before the words come out, and the apology slips in like a reflex. Not because you did something wrong, but because asking for something feels like you're about to become too much. If that sounds familiar, nothing is broken inside you. This isn't weakness. It isn't low self-esteem in the way people usually mean it. Your brain learned a very specific pattern a long time ago, that having needs could cause friction, that your presence might create tension, and that the safest thing to do was to make yourself smaller before anyone had the chance to be annoyed. The apology isn't really about guilt. It's a protection response. And once you understand where it comes from, it starts to make a different kind of sense. The first thing to understand is that this pattern almost always starts in the emotional environment you grew up in, not necessarily a traumatic one. Sometimes it was a home where people were stressed or stretched thin or emotionally unpredictable. Maybe your parents weren't cruel, they were just tired, and when you asked for something, the response wasn't always anger. Sometimes it was a sigh, a pause, a shift in energy that your child brain learned to read as, "You are adding weight to someone who is already carrying too much." That's all it takes. You didn't need to be yelled at, you just needed to feel, enough times, that your needs landed as a burden. And so your nervous system made a decision. Before anyone else could react, you'd soften the blow yourself. You'd pre-apologize. You'd let them know that you already knew you were asking too much, even when you weren't. It was brilliant, really. A small child finding a way to stay emotionally safe in a world that felt conditionally welcoming. The second layer is about attachment. When your early experience teaches you that closeness comes with a cost, that love is stable as long as you're easy, pleasant, and undemanding, you develop a deeply automatic habit of minimizing yourself in relationships. Psychologists sometimes call this anxious attachment, but the label matters less than the feeling. It's the sense that connection is fragile, that people stay when you're convenient and pull away when you're not. So apologizing before a request becomes a way of saying, "I already know this is an inconvenience, and I want you to know I won't hold it against you if you say no." You're not just asking for a ride to the airport, you're negotiating for continued closeness. You're trying to make sure the relationship survives the act of you needing something. But here's the part nobody tells you. This isn't just about childhood. This pattern rewires the way you experience everyday adult life. At work, you apologize before sharing an idea in a meeting, not because the idea is bad, but because taking up space feels like a risk. In friendships, you over-explain why you're canceling, as though a simple, "I can't make it," would cause irreparable damage. In romantic relationships, you ask for affection like it's a favor. "Sorry, I know this is silly, but could we just..." You pad everything with disclaimers because somewhere deep in your operating system, the belief still runs. If I need something, I become harder to love. And this is where it gets interesting, because this behavior doesn't stay the same across your life. In your 20s, it might look like people-pleasing. In your 30s, it starts to feel like exhaustion. A quiet resentment that builds because you've spent years making yourself easy for everyone, and no one has noticed the cost. By your 40s or 50s, it can shift again, sometimes into withdrawal, sometimes into a slow, tentative reclaiming of your voice. The behavior evolves. The need underneath it never changed. You always wanted the same thing, to be allowed to need things without it threatening your place in someone's life. There's something else happening beneath all of this that deserves attention. The pre-apology is, at its core, an emotional regulation strategy. It reduces uncertainty. When you apologize before asking, you're not just managing the other person's reaction, you're managing your own nervous system. You're giving yourself a controlled, predictable entry point into a situation that feels dangerous. Think of it like checking the temperature of the water before you get in. The apology is your hand reaching in first, testing whether it's safe. It gives you a tiny buffer of time to gauge the other person's face, their tone, their energy, before you fully committed to the vulnerable act of wanting something from them. It's your body's way of saying, "I need a soft landing here." And in many ways it works. That's why it persists. It lowers conflict. It keeps people comfortable around you. It creates a kind of emotional safety. Not the deep kind, but the immediate surface-level kind, where nobody is upset and everything stays smooth. It's like a blanket you've carried since childhood, worn thin in places, but still the first thing you reach for when the room gets cold. The problem isn't that the strategy is bad. The problem is that it was designed for a situation that may no longer exist. You built it when you were small, and the people around you were the whole world. But you're not small anymore. And the people in your life now may not be the ones who made your needs feel like an inconvenience. That's the quiet tragedy of this pattern. It was a gift you gave yourself, a way to stay safe, stay close, stay loved. But over time, it starts to cost something. It costs you the experience of being fully seen. Because when you apologize before every request, you're telling the world a story about yourself. That you are too much, that your needs are a problem, that you should come with a warning label. And the people around you start to believe it. Not because they want to, but because you've been so convincing. The truth is simpler than the pattern makes it seem. You are a person who learned very early that love might have conditions. And so you became someone who meets those conditions before anyone asks you to. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's a child doing their very best with what they had. You don't need to stop apologizing overnight. You don't need to perform some version of confidence that doesn't feel like yours. You just need to know, the next time you catch yourself saying sorry before asking for something completely reasonable, that it's not a flaw. It's a memory, a very old one. And it's been trying to keep you safe for a very long time.